Yep. Hallelujah. Yep. Ta-ta-ta. Ta-ta-ta-ta. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Shields! Shields! Get your shield up! Put your shield up! Put it up! Put them up, put them up, put them up! Roll them out, roll them out, roll them out! Put your shield up! Oh, hang on, gotta get some coffee. Greetings, programs. Your old buddy Ingrid Bernal here. Back once again on the Runehammer. It's Thank You Patron Day. I got my Cobra shirt on. I got my gym hairdo. I don't give a fuck. I'm disheveled. Thank you, patrons, for being my patrons. That's the end of the video. Later. No, well, I guess that would be the easy way to do it. It's November 9th, and that means Thank You Patron Day. I got an email from old Patreon. It said, do something that says Thank You Patrons on it. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. But I was at the Gaim. I was worshiping the gods of strength in the Iron Church. So I said, I gotta hurry home and do some crap. Now, let's do some crap, and let's start with a retrospective. Coffee. Nothing goes with shield banging and sword clanging like a nice warm cup of joe. Let me tell you what. Okay, can you believe 5 years back, 5 years are gone, almost 6 years now. I actually think December 7th might be the 6-year mark since Drunken Dragons appeared. 6 years gone, 2013. Crazy. And I think the debut was them making a glass role-playing table. If you can believe that. An underlit role-playing table. That one, and making your world map look like it was really old. That was my genius contribution to YouTube 6 years ago. Here we are 6 fracking years later. And you know what the crazy part is about this? Before we do this recap, that is the longest I have ever done one thing in my entire life, is 6 years. That's longer than school, college. That's longer than any job I've ever had. And it's 1 year short of where the longest I've ever lived in one place as an adult. I mean, am I an adult? I don't know, but you get the point. 6 years, crazy town. And not only has it been 6 years, it has been 3 years now. No, 4, is it 4 years? I don't know. Could be 4. Of just being Runehammer, which is, a lot of people still, even to this day, ask me why I switched to the name of my channel from Drunkens and Dragons to Runehammer. And I would ask forgiveness and remembrance that Runehammer actually came before Drunkens and Dragons. Runehammer was my brand before Drunkens and Dragons existed. And so Drunkens and Dragons didn't really change. It rolled into it. So since that happened, though, I have been living on ye old Runehammer. Now, large part of that is because of Index Card RPG, and that has turned out to be, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself on the retrospective here. But in large, double large part, it is this sort of new and emerging culture, which is currently best held, I think, by Patreon. Now, this is crazy because, I mean, can you imagine even 10 years ago, the idea of patronage was something you would talk about like with Michelangelo in the late Renaissance or something. Like, this is like, Aristotle paying Sophocles to write tragic poetry. This is such an old idea that it was not really part of daily talk not that many years ago. And now, especially because of the adpocalypse on YouTube, which has happened now, what, 3 times? It's gotten worse and worse. A lot of creative people have turned to Patreon. Now, Patreon definitely has its issues. It's really hard to find stuff. It's really hard to like show up as a new person and download all the goodies. Like if you know about my channel out there and you're thinking about joining, you pay $1 stinking and you've got, I don't know, years of material to download. All the 50 some podcasts and all the RPGs that have been released on there, all the virtual tabletop assets and everything for your $1. There's no shenanigans with my Patreon page. There's no sort of tiers or paying by asset or any of that stuff. You just pay $1. And the best part that about Patreon, before I get into like what happened. Yeah, I know. I'm not good at selling things. I never was. Okay. I completely lost my train of thought. And that's okay. You see, that's how you know you're not equipped for the internet. When one comment completely throws you off your entire train. You know what the best thing in life is? Huh? What's that? Squirrel. The best thing about the shield wall of Runehammer is not the amount of us that there are, which is coming up on 700 now, which is mind-blowing. And it's not like sort of the organic way, at least in my view, that it has grown out of the audience that you guys have formed and given life to. It's the all-for-one approach, which is that people who are paying over $1 have almost no reason to do so, except to support the people who are just paying $1 to get in, because they're a little skinny that month, you know what I mean? Plus, there's a lot of different cool Patreon creators out there to support. I know my monthly Patreon budget is about $200, so that's how many different creators I'm supporting. So you got to be judicious, and so that's why we do this kind of flat system. Is like it's $1 to get in, but people paying more than $1 are basically making it happen for me, basically, as paying my freaking income. So that's another thing, is that, like, make no mistake, you guys, Patreon pays my damn rent. Especially because I'm such a bum and so lazy with YouTube. You know, YouTube was really exciting in the beginning, but sort of became less a part of my daily life as it evolved. Maybe because more creators were showing up, and that feeling of innovating, like, the tabletop sort of crafting game was sort of, I felt satisfied with what I had done. But either way, YouTube, and also like ad revenue is just not a thing that gets you excited unless you have like 10 million subs. And so it just started becoming less part of my daily life. And I think that's happened to a lot of creative people. And Patreon got more and more important as far as being able to go full time. Now, there's one other note there, is the difference between going full time and doing it on top of a day job. There is no way to overstate it. And that's why I wanted to throw up a video about y'all shields to say thank you guys, because the amount of work and the quality of work that I can do going all in is just completely different than when I still had like a 50-hour-a-week job and I was commuting, and I'd get home and try to get dinner done, and then, like, you know what I mean, still show up and whip off some cool RPG stuff. That's when I was, really doing index card RPG, and that was a real vein popper, you know what I mean? That was difficult. So thank you, fucking A. So what has happened? Why thank you, patrons? This is crazy. It's been 3 years now. Another thing I was looking at is I've been working on a sort of lifetime reward for my patrons. Some of my highest end patrons, it's amazing and wonderful how much they've supported me over the years. And I really want to come up with something super special to send at a certain level. And this would be a pretty small group that reached this level. But as I was working on that, I was looking through and I couldn't believe, and I was also humbled and honestly moved how much some of you guys have contributed over the years total through Patreon. And I owe you where I live. I owe you this internet connection. I owe you the Discord channel, which has basically every option Discord offers is bought into that channel to support the Immortal group. And then also the forums, which are custom coded. We wrote those ourselves, thanks to Nick out there, when Google Plus shut down. And that wasn't cheap. That wasn't cheap at all, and it still has maintenance costs. And I couldn't do any of that stuff without you guys. So I still think it's one of the cooler forums out there because of the way that me and Nick put it together. I'm really proud of it because it has that sort of card interface that I really hated to see go. The stack style of forums just makes me depressed. It feels like doing work or something, whereas the card style to me always feels like a lot of fun. So if you haven't checked out the Runehammer forums and you're into doing like DIY RPG stuff, go check it out. It's kind of bonzo, actually, how much stuff goes on in there. And it's really exciting. Will this be on the channel later? I'm not sure, Lawrence. Maybe, probably. You know how... Yeah. Usually the only ones I pull down are the ones where I just get absolutely blitzed on camera. And then the next day I'm just like, I have, drinking remorse. And I'm just like, dear Lord, I look like a complete... I look really disheveled right now. I look like I just got beat up and crawled home in the rain. Which is basically a pretty good description of going to the gym. So, boom! Thank you, patrons. Here's what has happened. It started out as Drunkens and Dragons. My goal was to get drunk on the internet and make jokes about D&D. And always have been a huge fan, not only of D&D, but of all kinds of tabletop RPGs. And that's what the concept started as, was wouldn't it be funny? You people can watch me push myself to the absolute limit of human drinking capability. I've always been con is definitely my highest stat, so I wanted to put that to use. It was just going to be funny, and then, if my friends could chuckle about it. But by like the third video, I realized like I'm like legit interested in this topic. I didn't want to just do a gag version of it. I was legitimately interested in the research, the theory, the DIY life, and then eventually the crafting involved in the hobby and stuff. And it just started taking me away. It started running away. And then before I knew it, 4 days a week or so, late into the night, I was working on projects and making videos. And that went on for 2 years. Now, I know a lot of people always say like, oh, go back to how it was and, do this again and get back to this that you were doing again and this kind of stuff. And I appreciate that, but also realize how gnarly that was, that lifestyle. Even if you were working on it full time with no staff and no help, like that is a lot of work. Doing those like really carefully edited videos and everything takes just days. It takes forever because you got to pick through like 10 hours of garbage to get, 20 minutes of garbage. So, oh man. So that's how it began. And then it really took a turn, and that's when I sort of, my main D&D group, my home group, as they say, my table group, was done. We were done with a gigantic campaign. A lot of people, we'd been playing every single week for quite a while, like almost 3 years, 2.5 years. And so it's kind of like, we're kind of good to go for now. We're going to move on and do some other stuff. And really since then, I haven't pulled together a group with quite that magical of a harmonious, sort of thing. And you guys know how this is. Sometimes you have a group that's just amazing and it's like every week just, and then other times it's just not coming together and just time's passing. And that's when, to satisfy my hunger to roll dice, that's when I got into playing online. And playing and, basically starting an X split and then finding my way over to Roll20. And that is when things changed quite a bit. Now, a lot of people hear this sort of thing about playing online and they're like, but the whole point of playing D&D or playing tabletop is to get at the tabletop, is to be there with your friends and gather and stuff like that. Couldn't agree more. That is very true. But when your interests started to become more far-flung, I really think that playing on virtual becomes a really natural thing to progress to. And by far-flung, I mean maybe you're interested in some fringe RPGs, maybe you want to play sci-fi, maybe you want to play weird stuff, and you just don't have those people in your area. And for me anyway, the urge to roll those dice was more than the urge to just wait around for some imaginary sort of super group that was going to come together that just wasn't going to happen. I live in a pretty small town up by the mountains, so it's not coming together. Now, living in a big city may or may not solve that. You still might not find that magic group. And so online just starts getting more and more appealing, especially when you don't worry about a lot of the technical stuff and you just really use it as a way to see your friends. And the more that I discovered that, the more it changed the essence of what Runehammer is. And I know that in some ways maybe that's polarized some of my audience. Maybe they have no interest at all playing online and I've kind of left them behind a little bit. And that's unfortunate, but I have always set out to say that I want to be authentic with what my hobby is, not just try to make a sort of popular YouTube channel. And so, yeah, I've probably lost a lot of popularity by, stepping away from some of the crafting table kind of stuff. But my weekly games are online now. And I honestly, I like it that way. I like to play just kind of in my room and like with my beer on the side and kind of just hanging with my homies. And I honestly feel if once you get over the past that you're sort of still on screen time, like online is great. You can rewind, you can more dynamically sort of create gameplay as you go. And I think it's actually a really capable platform for playing, not just a convenient platform. So that changed. That's about halfway through the Runehammer journey. And then we come all the way forward here to Patreon, the Patreon sort of phase of my Runehammer journey, which is where I leaned in on making stuff for people who are using VTT, as well as publishing as many new sort of game variants as possible. This is another thing to think about. Like Blood and Snow to me, for example, is not that huge of that great of an option as far as playing at the table. There's not a lot of people out there who want to play like Ice Age D&D, right? That's a really small niche group. But online, it's not that hard to find 6, 8 people that want to throw down and play this kind of stuff. And so suddenly that work is worth doing. And that's amazing to me. And then that's when you get into the weirder and the wilder stuff. And maybe one of the oddest ones is Bearcats, which is, 2 months back, bless you patrons, set me loose and said, create just whatever is on your mind. Just create something completely out of left field. And that's when I created Bearcats. And Bearcats is one of my favorite things I've made in quite some time. Really proud of Bearcats and the art and the writing involved. I'm really proud of that. That feels good to have that like in my quiver. So there we are. And so now we're moving forward. Okay. Oh boy, what do we got going on here? Hey, thanks, AJ. Yeah, now, awesome. And it's been so cool to see a generational change too in YouTube and how people that were either starting out or were new when I was sort of starting have evolved and, in several cases surpassed me. That is such a fun feeling to watch while I'm sort of back here in my own little Dagobah hut, making stew in the swamp, to see others doing this crazy awesome stuff. Like the best example is probably Black Magic Craft. Like he just went from starting after me and in some ways I think, rooting me on when he was getting into it to now far surpassing me in audience and kind of killing it and reaching like celebrity status at this point. And he's also a good dude who's fun to chill out with. You know what I mean? Have a beer back in the rumpus room. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, that's kind of been my journey. And that brings us up to the present, which is Altered State, right? And working on Cyberpunk and especially Retune. And these are like weird projects, right? I mean, this is a choose your own adventure cyberpunk novel is what Retune is. And that is my primary focus right now. That's where I'm putting like most of my work time. That's a bizarre project if you really think about like audience viability, but I don't care because I know that you guys will not only show up to read it, give me useful feedback, make me a better choose your own adventure writer, but also that I will be supported as I experiment. And to me, that is what is so crazy about Patron. That's why it's Thank You Patrons Day. Not because I can make a living and like, yay, and so I need to do, predictable market proven stuff and kind of one foot in front of the other. No, this allows me to completely experiment and to see if things have promise. And I got to say that the corporate and or sort of job environment out there is not conducive to experimentation. And that's okay. I'm not critiquing them because that is not a very reliable revenue model to have your employees experimenting completely out of their normal creative environment. That is unwise for a company, and everyone's stability for getting paid relies on not doing that. So as a private creator supported directly by the audience, I get to experiment. I get to create RPGs that are their entire games that are self-contained. I get to make supplements for, my more sort of quote unquote best-selling RPGs. Get to try stuff that's complete dead ends, like my card game Ironheart is just kind of like throw that out. Like it was fun to make, it's cool looking, but doesn't matter. There's no response there. There's no feedback relationship. And that feedback is what drives creative people. When you don't necessarily have to sell everything in your garage to be excited as a creative person, but to see that even a few dozen or maybe 100 people are excited about something you did, that makes you want to keep going and make another thing and just keep rocking. And even more so is to see a lot of you guys come into your own, and girls come into your own as creative people because of your involvement in this community. And that's like a lot what the Discord group has become about with Runehammer. It's less about like, here are my announcements, and it's a lot more about everybody doing their own creative, crazy stuff, which brings us all the way forward to some of the stuff like Dave Thomavor's Age of Snakes supplement, which we made closely together. And in my mind, it was a big level up for him as far as like focus and discipline to go from that halfway point to that finish point and kill it and finish strong. And that's awesome. And then like Alex also is a fantastic GM who kind of took the plunge on Altered State. I'm not the lead on that project. He is writing that project. I'm doing the art and kind of waving my arms on the side. So to see that stuff happen is super killer. And it's just so satisfying. It makes you want to keep going and going. And like I said, this is the longest I've done anything. And I've had cool jobs in my adult life. I've had some bitchin' jobs that people would kill for in this life. And even then I would do them for 2 years and I kind of move on. But this has really captured my imagination because I'm allowed to change and to morph. And that has been always part of my creative journey is changing and finding renewal by leaving things for a while. And in this case, like fantasy is what I'm doing that with right now. I'm kind of putting fantasy down for a while. I'm going to live in cyberpunk land until that urge for fantasy gets so strong that you come back strong and like, yeah, get back into it, like, you know, with a vengeance. Hey, thanks, Jim. Oh yeah, a sip of coffee. And Junked, yeah, is another one that I didn't even mention. You know, all these things are either free on my Patreon page, or if you just contact me, I just send people stuff all the time because I'm not really trying to get every single sale that I can so much as I really like this experimental support. That's what I'm all about. And so if people have trouble getting their purchase to work on one of my products, or somehow there was a snafu or this or that, I'll just like zip up a ton of my stuff and just send them like all the stuff I have, you know, just to be like, hey, sorry about that. Look, here's all the stuff. And those of you who are out there, you know who you are. And that to me is what I'm doing. I'm not trying to be like, gotta make sure I get my $4 on every single sale. Those $4 are important, but it's far more important for me to have what we have developed, which is this Patreon situation, where each month, not only can I directly ask you guys what would be dope, but then get supported while I experiment on some of my own ideas as well. Like Retune. No one told me to make Retune. Honestly, I think because of how difficult it's been for the last couple of years, I've been trying to write a Choose Your Own Adventure, and I've failed every single time. It really seems quite crazy to try to do Retune, but I made it over that hump of sort of figuring out how to get the writing done and how to keep track of the prompts and the way the branches work and how to keep it all straight in my head. And once I crossed that, got over that speed bump, it's been smooth. It's really probably my favorite thing I've ever written. And so that's super exciting. You don't get through those moments without being supported as you push over those bumps. Because they're just not easy. And in a normal job environment, a lot of times you're going to hit those bumps and there's just no time to press and keep failing. You need to change gears into something that's reliably revenuable. So I have really a unique privilege, and that is all thank you to you guys. Okay, so it's just like that's an unintentional roll. Yeah, and trying not to ever be a sort of a profit pincher. Always trying to avoid that mindset here at Runehammer, because I really just think it's about like, hey, I made a thing, and the exciting part for me is hearing what people think and hearing their improvements and getting them in and updating them for free. Not sort of professoring, and like, here, behold the wonders of what I make. That is never the tone that I want to take. I always want to take a collaborative tone with everybody. And if you take a look at like the play-by-post game that just wrapped up on the Runehammer Discord, that to me is an amazing example of like watching others create. Even though supposedly, it's the Runehammer channel, but this is just other people, especially Kubo was the host and did all this crazy cool art, and they had this entire like tech system that they ran that he calls Omega Play by Post, and like just the way they did, it's just so cool to watch it play out, and the final encounter that they did play out, and just like so badass. I think it took them about 6 weeks to do the whole game. So yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to say thank you guys. And obviously, it's a little bit of an ad too. I mean, this is a bit of an ad for Patreon, right? Like, get over there and throw $1 in, download everything you can, and then bail out. Like, if you want to game the system, that's how you do it. Feel free, like, go do that. But the most important thing to me is that the creative material gets to you guys. That's to me is the priority. That leads to other opportunities and leads to new discoveries creatively. Oh yeah, Blame is fantastic. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to raise my shield. I wanted to raise my mug and say thank you guys. I didn't want to hoot and holler too much. The next video coming up is 3 adventures to start your cyberpunk campaign. So we're going to go all the way back to one of my most watched videos of all time, which is 3 adventures to start your fantasy campaign. We're going to take it all the way back to that, and we're going to do 3 adventures to start your cyberpunk campaign. So if you guys are out there, no matter what system you may be using, or book, or combination, or homebrew, or whatever, we're going to talk about how to get cyberpunk off the ground, because a lot of times it starts off with this kind of crummy, make 20 credits kind of feeling, and it can be so much cooler than that. That's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to be on the internet forever, you guys. I just got out of the damn gym. I'm all gross and tired and crawling through the gutter, and I need to get my day underway. There's a bunch to do. Also, here at the end of the month on Patreon, we're going to be releasing our quick start kit for Altered State for Cyberpunk, and that's going to be this crazy map kit that I did. We're going to do a video on how to use that kit, and we've got like about a 25-page PDF, which is character creation and the new combat rules and everything for Altered State, and that's going to be for everybody. And then the full project that we're doing, that's going to be later, and that'll be for sale on drive-thru. So the usual drill. And you guys, thank you, double thank you. And also, word up, strength, honor, beer. I'm going to be right here, Ingrid Bernal, your old buddy up here in northern Runehammer area. And hell, here's the 6 more years. I have no idea what's going to happen. Next year is con year. 2020 is the year of the cons. So come out and hang out with me at the cons, and let's drink beer and do push-ups in the hallway of a weird hotel. And until then, you keep it real, you do not steal, and you're always going to get a deal, all right? So I will catch you guys on the flippy canoe, and, may your dice roll high. See you guys later. A chiquita banana. A chiquita banana. Thanks, everybody. Later.